I'm talking about octaves now. This is the example 23.1 in the book, chapter 23. And it's the famous octave passage in Chopin's heroic Polonaise, the one in A-flat major. First we have a passage that does this in E, and then it turns it upside down and does it in E-flat. And sometimes pianists get very tired doing that, and that will happen if it isn't understood exactly how to play an octave in the first place. It's not this with the whole arm involved. It's not this with the wrist. Some people think octaves come from the wrist. They don't. The motion is not initiated from the wrist, although there's flexibility there. So let me show you how we play octaves. It's essentially, even if it's a legato octave, it's essentially a staccato technique. I recommend, if your hand is large enough, and my hand is just barely large enough, to play octaves and scales when they involve both white and black keys, to try to stay in line with the black keys as much as possible, to avoid this in and out motion, especially in quick passages, because that takes more time and it can also be tiring if it isn't understood exactly how to do that. All right, back to the basic principle of playing octaves. It's essentially a staccato technique, so it's a pluck, and that pluck takes me to the next octave, and that pluck takes me to the next octave. Now also underneath that is a little bit of this thing you may have heard of called rotation. So if I really exaggerate it, it's as if I'm doing this kind of a thing, and then turning back, and then this. This is huge, obviously you can't do that in speed, but in speed it might be something like this. So this allows me to use this kind of a movement instead of these smaller isolated fingers or tiring the tendons and ligaments of the forearm. By using the forearm rotation, I'm actually using the stronger muscles that are in the bicep, keeping in mind that whatever limb is playing is being operated, the mechanism is in the limb behind it. All right, well, anyway, enough about limbs. The basic technique of octave playing is a staccato or a pluck. So it's pluck and land, pluck. It's not correct to do this, pluck, and stay on that previous octave, because what you need to learn to do is use each octave to send you to the next one. And the key is actually sending the hand away. So that's one thing to learn. I'll try to get the camera in the right spot. There we go. Now, if you find that the octave does feel smaller farther out, if you feel you need to come out a little bit, that can work too. And I'll show you about how that works in a minute. All right. So once you've learned to let each octave send you to the next one, when we try to play them together as that short scale, we have to think of a couple of other things. Number one is how we shape those octaves. And if I kind of exaggerate, and I'll get the camera, maybe it's better at this angle, if I really exaggerate and make a huge movement, it's as if I'm making this kind of a shape over on the way down, under on the way up. It's almost like I'm doing this, describing a flattened ellipse, but it's very close to the key and very flattened. By giving it a shape, it helps avoid tiring. So it looks something like this. I'm trying to look at the piano and look at the camera and play at the same time, which is not so easy. Then the other thing that I add to that is in addition to the shape, is a grouping. I'm going to shape over on the way down, and now from the low note, I feel a kind of a new impetus, a starting place from here to here. So it's on the way down and now back up. So it's shape over on the way down, under on the way up, and a sense of starting from here to make this connection. Interestingly enough, when it changes to the other key, to E flat, it's the same thing in reverse. So the shaping is going to be under on the way down and over on the way up. So it's, I have to look at the piano. Stop looking at the camera, look at the piano. And again, I let the bottom note be a starting place to send me back up to the top. So it's out. So I'm shaping a little bit out, and a little bit under, and a little bit in, and a little bit over. So let me be clear. I'm shaping under on the way down, and a little bit out, meaning towards my torso. So it's a little bit like I'm shaping this way, and then I'm coming around this way. So I'm making this kind of a circular motion, which is really not a circle at all, but a flattened ellipse with no sharp edges. So it's, and I use this to get me back up. Octaves.